Hey, I'm Nicole,
And I'm Lindsay.
and today we're going to talk about something that I have heard now for several years, but I feel like I've been hearing it a lot more lately. So I've been in staffing, recruiting, one shape, way or another since 2010. And yes, I was a baby recruiter. I'm joking, I was. I feel like that ages me quite a bit.
I hate when that
Um,
happens.
I'm like, oof. But even since my first year of recruiting, I always got the candidates that were like, I can never get hired. I am not getting interviews. Um, but I feel like I see it a lot more now, especially on LinkedIn. I see a lot of posts saying, I've put in 100 applications, 1,000 applications, and zero callbacks. I don't know if you feel the same.
I've seen that a lot lately. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on because, like, I see a lot of people hiring, but then I see all these people who are like, I keep applying and I'm not going anywhere. And I see that everywhere. And I'm like, oh my.
And I think hiring isn't what it was, 10 years ago when I started. I'm sure it wasn't, it's not the same as people before that. I think the job market has definitely changed. One thing I know for sure is when I started, applications were filled out by hand. And a lot of times they were handed over directly to me and like, this is who I am. And a lot of what I did was interviewing on the spot, right? Like people would come in, pick up an application, go home, fill out the application, and come back. And I started off in general industry. Um, so a lot of it was you come in, you interview, and the next day I need to put you to work because that was how quickly things happened. And I think now most applications are submitted online. And I know that a lot of times, depending on the job, you get 200, 300. Sometimes I've seen jobs that get 1,000 plus applicants. And I think that technology has completely changed recruiting and hiring in general. And a lot of people are blaming AI.
I, um, I do, I, I remember when I first applied for a job and my mom was like, you need a resume. So I put like a little resume together and I went to like all these places like McDonald's and I went to spas. I actually worked, my first job was at, a like a grooming company and kennel company for dogs, and so like I walk in with my little resume that's like I have no job experience.
And I
So
love
like
dogs.
yeah. And so it definitely is different nowadays. And I agree with you. Like I see a lot of people being like, I can't get past the first round. And even like when we post jobs and we're getting like 300 like resumes and you're having to weed through them and figure out which ones are like not real, which ones are real. And then with the use of AI for resumes, but also with the use of AI for parsing resumes and like scouring resumes and like rating resumes, and then people feeding like their resume into AI and letting AI write it. Like all of that is shaping the way that we like handle hiring and we look at things. And I mean, we talk about it all the time, like identifying immediately, like, oh, that's AI. Like I'm gonna pass over that. That's 100% AI. They didn't put any effort into that. And like as a human noticing those kind of things, like it's all starting to shape that hiring process for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember people would come into one of the first staffing agencies I worked at. People would come in, and at that time, I was working reception, and I would hand them a floppy disk that they had to input into. And I think we've talked about this before, but they would input a floppy disk and enter all the information, and heaven forbid, it went blank because it happened, and you have to start the entire 1 to 2 hour process all over again. Um, Now I feel like a lot of companies are using ATSs. They're using ATSs and they're using AI in one way or another to help their recruiters. And I think, I think both sides are right because just like you hear the employees side and hearing, I'm not getting callbacks, I'm not getting interviews. I hear employers saying, I don't have any candidates, I'm not getting qualified candidates. And I think it's really kind of a situation where we're missing each other. We're missing each other kind of in the middle, and part of it is being able, as someone seeking employment, communicate what skill sets I have and why I should be hired. and being able to translate that well in your resume so that if companies are using AI, that your resume is essentially picked up as a top candidate. Because in reality, as a recruiter, you're maybe looking at that resume 15 to 20 seconds. And that's what we truly have when we submit an application is 15 to 20 seconds to put words onto, I guess I was about to say paper, so but put
But
papers online and be able to say like this is who I am and have an impact.
I want to speak just a little bit like on the employer side and kind of ATS side and like what that kind of looks like, right? So maybe if you're looking for employment and you're like I've never really seen that part of it, you kind of understand what either like a recruiter, a hiring manager, somebody on the other end is kind of looking at when they're looking at ATSs. So when they're looking at an ATS, there's typically like a spot for your name, your date of birth, your social, like your demographics, right? Like we'll just call it what it is. And
Right.
then usually there's a spot for like skills. And depending on the system, sometimes there's a skill and it rates you like these are the ratings for this candidate. And a lot of times, companies will create their own kind of like rating system, right? So you're never going to know what their rating system is, but they are grabbing skills. And a lot of times when your resume is getting inputted, it's getting scanned through AI, and the AI is pulling your employment. It is pulling your skill set, and then it's just putting it in the system for everybody to refer back to. So when they're opening it up, they're not usually opening up your full resume. They're opening up and they're looking at like what kind of skills did they say? What kind of pay are they looking for? How many years of experience do they have? Then they might go and look at like the employment. But again, they're not looking at your resume. They're looking at what got parsed, right? So when you're creating resumes, you have to think about making your data very simplistic so that an AI reader, whether it's super intense or not at all, can pick up what you are trying to say. Start dates, end dates, cities, states, employers, skills, right? Like those are the things that it's just quickly grabbing. And a lot of times nobody's going back and re-looking to make sure that data got pulled in properly until they're like ready to, if you're working with a recruiter to submit you, or if you're HR, like as long as something pulled, then they might go look at your resume, right? So they're typically not. It's like you want to make, when you're working on it, you don't want to have the AI piece where yours is just completely AI'd, right? Because it's going to get dismissed when they start reading your skills. But you also want to set your resume up in a way that it's very simplistic so that it can get scanned in properly so that it can be read later on by something as well. So there's like this balance. So if you don't really know what an ATS looks like, it literally is just like a system and it has like all this demographics and it's automatically got your skills and it might even rate you kind of thing. So they're not always seeing the resume. Now, sometimes, right, sometimes people are still old school. They don't have ATSs and they're getting the resumes. And again, they're doing very similar things. They might throw you in an AI and be like, hey, tell me if this person might match it, right? Again, that AI is reading it. Or they may be scanning because as humans, we're not reading. We're not reading all the jumbo. I'm not reading all that jumbo. I'm just looking for the important things, right?
Yeah.
Like, so those are some things you got to like keep in mind when you're doing it. Don't use AI to create your resume, but think about how it might be scanned in and used on the other end, especially if you're applying to like a big corporation. They're less likely to have a man like looking at every man, woman, a human looking at every single one that comes in, right? So like that's something to think about when you're thinking about like hearing the words ATS and what that kind of looks like.
And I think a lot of times we look at it and when I see I've submitted 1,000 applications, I wonder, have you taken the time to look into 1,000 of those, organizations? Have you taken the time to really research them and understand what it is they're looking for? And so maybe instead of filling out 1,000 applications, you target a couple different places that maybe you're interested in. You do a little bit of research about the organization. What are they looking for? Some reviews. You take a look at your resume, compare it to some of the job descriptions. A lot of organizations post pretty detailed job descriptions, right? And if at an employer you're not, that's obviously something to look at as well on your end. It's your job descriptions. So taking a look at the job description, comparing your resume to that job and understanding, hey, if this were input into a scanning, how would my resume rate compared to the job and compared to what I have in my skill set? And also, you want to look at, do I truly have that skill set? Because after that resume gets reviewed, comes the interview process where you essentially have to prove, hey, this is my experience, but this is truly what I did. Because it's one thing to put it on a piece of paper, again, the paper, but very different to actually be able to explain what you did day to day that is going to translate to employers. So a lot of times I don't think it's going to be the AI. I think AI is useful in a sense of a lot of times, especially if you're applying to a small business, there's only so many people that have the time to look through 200 to 300 resumes. And I will tell you, I've spent hours and hours going through resumes because and sending out thank you notes. Thank you for submitting because you never want to not say thank you for taking the time to, submit your application. I realize that a lot of times it's not just a resume, it's someone's livelihood. It's someone who is desperate, maybe looking for work or looking for their next career opportunity. So I do try and be cognizant of that. But I do think that that's why it's so important for there to be better communication on both sides, both the employer side, both the employee side, and kind of understand how maybe AI helps us, how communication helps us, how follow up. Submit your resume, but don't just submit it. Send a follow up email. Hey, I hope you received my resume. And really, that's going to depend on the kind of role you're looking for. But I think follow up is important, not just I threw my name in the hat. We'll see how it goes. Have you found someone on LinkedIn that maybe is a connection? Like, could you shoot them in a message and be like, hey, I submitted an application. I have heard several times from people on our team, like, hey, did you receive an application from so and so? They reached out to me on LinkedIn and they said that they submitted an application. They look like they might be a good candidate. So I do think it's preparing your resume, understanding how AI works, understanding how employers are using it to find candidates, and communicating and networking as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I want to just kind of go a little technical, and we don't have to deep dive too much in it right now, but like we can deep dive in it later. But like when you're doing that follow up, finding somebody and connecting with them, so like networking ahead of time, right, and connecting with them and asking them if they could reach out to HR and see if they got it, those kinds of things, definitely. Another thing that you can do is kind of a tactic we've used before is like when you do that follow up reach out, also include something that makes you stand out, such as, you might let them know you're available to interview this week, or you're available to jump on a call today. If they're available, you'd love to chat with them, right? Like maybe that's in your follow up. And your follow up might have like a skill that you saw in the job description. Like, I just wanted to call out, I have this number of years of experience doing this, or when I was in sales, I was able to do this outcome. And I'd love to discuss that more with you today if you have a moment to talk, right? Like you're trying to get them to like notice you. And even though that sounds bold and brazen, like a lot of employers respect that because they understand that you're now invested in this process and you didn't just apply and hope that you got something, right? Like truly show up in that follow up. Like that's not just a like back in the day it used to be like, hey, I submitted a resume. I don't know where you're in the process. I'd love to get an interview. And it was kind of like this generic thing you just like copy and pasted in each of your emails. But when you're applying and you're getting turned down, it's usually because you're falling in to a category with everybody else. You're just another number. You didn't stand out. You didn't take that time, and just tweaking that and making that personable, right? That makes a big difference. And then like we've said before with the resume, like, there are two things that I hate about resumes. I'll just say this now. I hate when there's pictures on there. Okay. Don't do pictures. We'll go into a whole reason with pictures, but for starters, pictures screw up the AI process and it causes your resume to get just like pushed aside. They're like, I can't get it into the ATS. I'm moving on kind of thing, right? Okay, cool. They're in there, but I didn't get the skills. I didn't get anything about them, right? That's one, if you want to know how the AI is working on the other end. But number two, it's like, just don't do it. Like, right? Like, just don't put your picture on there. It's better off not. It takes up a lot of space that doesn't need to. For most jobs, there are some circumstances where it is required, right? But like generally speaking, there's plenty of industries that you don't need the image for. But the other thing that we talk a lot about is like, don't just tell me what you did, show me what you did, right? Like show me. And I think and we'll dive into this more, but I think that's something that people underutilize a lot is like that show me, like, why did this matter? How did I do this? What was the outcome? Who did I help? When you're looking at these roles, it's like you're being hired to solve a problem. Showcase how you solve that problem throughout everything that you're talking about in your resume. And that's where that, like, find a couple of really good jobs that you want to apply to and start making your resume match what they're looking for. Like when you say that, like that's part of what it is, right? It's like
Yeah.
tweak every little detail about your job to showcase how those things will solve the problem that they have. Even if it's, I flipped burgers at McDonald's, find something about that that is useful to a current employer, such as your customer service skills, right? Your multitasking, your time management, your ability to learn, like all of those things. Any of those things can be pulled in. And
Working under
employers,
pressure.
yeah, like employers appreciate knowing that you know how to take skills that you've acquired throughout your life and apply them today. Like,
Mm-hmm.
truly understand what you did and how that affects you today and how that caused growth. And like when I'm interviewing people and they can't do that, like that bugs me. I'm like, show me what you know now. Like show me that you can really understand what I need from you. In this, interview, whatever. Uh, but yeah, like when as you're talking about, like those are like some of my biggest like things. Like nothing irritates me more than getting a resume, salespeople especially. Like if you're going into a sales job and you don't have your KPIs listed, you might as well just not even apply. Like you can't do that. So there's just like so many things, right, that you can show me what you will do to help my company versus just trying to tell me with your fluff, right? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
just fluffing it up. And that's where AI drives me crazy, is because people are like stuffing these words in and this fluff. And I'm like, this doesn't tell me anything. Like this tells me nothing about you and what you actually can accomplish for me.
I think it makes things very generic. And, I think there's a big misconception that organizations, they need people. So it's just an easy hiring process and that they don't take hiring lightly. And I can say that hiring, especially internally, is not taken lightly ever. There's so many factors that come into play. It's not just let me post a job and look at a couple people and it takes people, it takes technology. Is it the right timing? Are my business needs there? Do we have the right budget to bring somebody else on board? Because it is very costly to bring people on board. And the communication and a lot of times, it's you just get lucky in finding a really great candidate and someone that you feel you connect with. And I think recruiting is, regardless of whether we have AI, we have the ATS, at the end of the day, it's going to be that people relationship. And it's being able to really prepare yourself, right? Both on the employer side and the employee side. It's preparing yourself to understand the process because overall, hiring is a process. And I think it's really important to understand both sides of it, right? And I think the more you educate yourself, the more you look into things, especially with how the job market is right now, I think the better chances you are of finding the right fit for you. Because we can all go out possibly and put out applications and find a job. But is that really the career that we want to get into? Is that really the place that is going to make us tick and that's going to be like, this is something I feel passionate about? Because I think at the end of the day, that's really what we're striving for. We're striving to find an employee who loves coming to work. I know that that's like what, but also no one, and that's what I mean. Like, right? Like, does everybody love going to work? Probably not. But I think if the team is great, it makes a huge difference in terms of how you all get along and the growth that you can have within the organization. And at the end of the day, that's not something AI can take over. The peopling will always be up to human beings. And AI is, I think, just a tool that you can use to kind of, when you're especially really overwhelmed with a lot of different tasks, it's an aid. You use it as an aid to try and source and find the right people that best match. And then from there, you do have to put in the legwork.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we talk about this all the time. Like AI isn't meant to replace a lot of things. It's meant
Right.
to be a tool and an aid to help facilitate speed, right? And not replace human, because human cannot replace human interaction. Like, it's just not, we're definitely not there yet. And so, yeah, I agree. Like, AI isn't there to replace. So regardless of which way, whether you're sitting on a recruiter or hiring team or you're sitting as an employee, that AI is not to replace your actual effort and work. It is to be a tool to help you, right? And to guide you and make things either faster or a little more robust if you're doing something, right? But again, just a tool, not the actual human, not the final product, not where it's going to end up and land, for sure.
I agree.
All right. So I think today we're going to end there. I think what we'll do is we'll come back next week and we'll talk a little bit more about each of these topics, a little more in depth, so that you can take that and actually like apply it to what you're doing. So we will talk to you guys again next week. Bye.
Bye.